Hello. Paddock to plate or farm to fork are terms used by consumers who value knowing where their food comes from. It's been mostly used when talking about meat, coffee, wine and cheese. But now there's a new and perhaps surprising frontier: flour and malt. Plain old flour is anything but, as Sean Murphy reports.
Danish-born Michael Clausen is no conventional baker. He was a chef before starting his business 18 years ago.
It's used in lots of cafes and restaurants and, you know, any kind of food service. They want to make great sandwiches on sourdough bread. This is where this one goes.
And while he's now selling around 12,000 loaves a day across 3 states, the emphasis has always been on traditional sourdough.
So the starter is a natural fermentation of flour and water. This is 26 years old, and it is a beautiful combination of bacteria and yeast and enzymes that goes into the bread and actually gives it the lift and the flavour and the very natural health in it. Very much like yogurt, good for your stomach.
And just as starters give sourdough bread a unique flavour, Michael Clausen's brasserie bread company relies on another crucial ingredient. It's the grain grown by farmers like Simon Doolan, which is managed through the supply chain from his farm gate to the company's 3 bakeries.
The minute they're baking that next season's variety, I'm getting feedback from the Melbourne, Gold Coast and Sydney bakeries direct from the oven. It's a huge sense of, it gives you a huge sense of achievement, it does, yeah.
Simon Doolan grows his Lancer wheat at North Star, 50 kilometres south of the Queensland border in northeastern New South Wales. His 7,000 hectares is in what's known as the Golden Triangle, a grain-growing region famous for its big yields of high-protein, high-gluten wheat that makes excellent bread-making flour. But this year, he's dealing with the worst drought in 4 generations.
It's the worst year we've ever had. 65 was bad, but this one is much worse than that.
And you've been recording rainfall here since the 20s?
Since the late 20s, when my great-grandfather bought a property called Mile Downs, just east of here, yeah.
Doesn't look too bad though.
It looks amazing. For the year, for the amount of in-crop rain, 18 mils up until now, up until flowering. That's all we've had, yeah.
Simon, I know you can't drought-proof the place, but what sorts of things have you done to actually get the most of the little rain that you've had?
It's been about all of our rotation. It's about conserving our moisture and keeping our stubbles. Keeping your soils protected like a garden. So that's basically a combination of the previous crops, sorghum, wheat and chickpea stubble, and we're leaving it all there to break down on top of the soil, and eventually it breaks down into the soil, giving you soft soil, and it all produces a fungi. So you're putting all of the goodness back into the soil.
Simon Doolan's conservative, sustainable approach is what attracted him to Provenance, a Sydney-based wholesaler. It sells single-origin flour and malt to bakers and brewers, which means it can trace everything back to the farms where it's grown.
Well, the benefit to the customers is that they get the unique values that come from the minerals and nutrients of the soil with the varietal underlay. Grain has for a long time been an averaged commodity. We're able to identify those unique properties from each different farm and link them up so that the baker and the brewer and their customers can enjoy and utilise the benefits that come from that.
John Campbell has been building relationships between his growers and his customers.
I think the more you understand the people behind what you're doing, the more you can work with them about improving and making it better, and so that's been really important.
Can you taste the difference?
Absolutely. There is no doubt about the difference in flavours. When we are making bread with different seasonalities, when we're making bread with different style of grain from different farms, and I line them up in front of you, you'll be able to taste a difference in it. All we're trying to do is just really get more flavour and more nutrition into something that is that normal as bread. This is fantastic. This is the Bull, so award-winning loaf, many championships, as a loaf of bread can get at the RAS. And this is made with the wheat that we harvested last year. Grab a piece and let's taste it. So like wine tasting, just keep chewing so you get it in the back of your mouth. And really start getting the flavours up.
Taste testing bread baked from their own wheat is a rare treat, and the Doolan family is excited to be supplying a bakery that won the President's Medal at the Sydney Royal Show this year.
It's got the right amount of sour in it. The crust has a good sweetness to it, and it's made from Dad's wheat. That's the best bit.
But it's exciting to see the end product. It really is with anything we do. And I think it's where we're going, really, in this day and age. Traceability, basically. That's probably the word.
Paddock to plate is a well-worn path for products such as meat, cheese and wine. But flour has historically been sold in bulk, all mixed in to an average standard. John Campbell had to find specialist millers like Kevin Sherry to guarantee the integrity of his supply chain and a premium product.
If you compare us to the largest millers in Australia, they buy their wheat and they buy it through a commingled system. So they'll go into storage silo complexes around Australia. From there, they'll bring them in train loads, which are mixed, could be a mixture of 10, 15 growers all at once. They don't know what the variety is or the quality of that grain. So you end up getting a thing that's called fair average quality. We keep the best grain for our milling, for human consumption, and the things that don't make grade will go off into stock feed.
Kevin Sherry started his career in milling at 14. He built and ran mills all over the Asia Pacific before starting his own business at Tamworth 15 years ago. He uses a cold milling process to preserve the protein and nutritional value of his finished product. The flour is also aged for up to 6 weeks. He says most flour needs artificial additives because it hasn't been aged.
We don't need to use any chemicals in our baking process to help assist it through the process. We can just use an all-natural product where the baker's virtually just using flour, water and salt.
Provenance also does a malt barley for craft brewers. It's grown here on this 17,800 hectare farm near Moree in New South Wales. It's run by Andrew and Jodie Crow. They're not here today, but their son Stanley has things under control. This is Stanley Crow. They call him the supervisor. He's just 11 years old, but he's in charge while Dad's away.
Dad said just look after the place, check on all the men, see how they're going.
And how are they going?
They're going well. They're doing their jobs, and yeah.
What's the secret to growing a good barley crop?
Rain, a lot of rain.
Not a lot of that around this year.
No, not much.
So even though it's dry, how do you think you'll go?
Yeah, we'll have a pretty good year. There might be enough barley to fill up the silos. Yes.
They are big silos, and while the Crows mostly supply the big brewers, they are growing a heritage barley for the Provenance brand. The barley variety is called Gairdner, and it goes into the Hunter Brewing Company's biggest selling mid-strength beer.
This old-fashioned barley has a lot more flavour than the modern varieties. Modern varieties of barley have been bred for yield, so you get much higher yields. In the last 10 years, they get something like 40% greater yield in the paddock, which is an amazing improvement. but they've sacrificed flavour. They've been breeding barley for yield and not for flavour. So here we go.
So this is it.
This is the one.
So the fact that the barley comes from a single farm, does it make any difference to the flavour?
You have a taste, you'll find out in a second. I'm absolutely convinced. There's no doubt in my mind.
At Sydney University's Narrabri campus in New South Wales, plant breeders are now investigating flavour in a trial of 120 historic wheat varieties.
It was bred in the 1800s, late 1800s, and sourced from, I think, the gene bank.
How tall will it get?
These will get well over a metre tall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
John Campbell and Michael Clausen initiated the study.
So for 100 years, breeding has really been about yield, 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 yield. What we're doing is we're flipping it on its head and we are searching for flavour and nutrition as the key drivers, and then being able to commercialise that with the modern varieties so that you've got something that is scalable and commercial, and being able to supply to people unique flavours with nutrition from grains.
Baking traits such as crumb structure and dough strength are still being assessed. But 24 varieties from the trial have been selected for taste testing later this year.
And they'll go through a whole panel, and hopefully we'll find one or two that are standout for taste testing and hopefully aren't too yield resistant. And then we will start putting them through our modern breeding process and hopefully have a designer flavoured wheat that, bred for taste rather than for something that can just go through a baking process quickly or has good crumb structure that actually tastes like bread used to.
You ready to get covered in flour? Yeah. Here we go. All right. Here we go.
At Brasserie Bred, they're already working on a new generation of consumers with what they call breaducation.
1, 2, 3, go.
It's about teaching kids an appreciation of what makes good food and where it comes from.
Then left, then right, then left.
Well, truly to understand where food comes from, I truly believe it's really important, so you know how they ended up where it is. So we know what has been in the soil, but we also understand completely how to make a beautiful loaf of bread that has character and flavour from the area.
There you go. A2. 9.
How does that taste?
Really good.
How does it taste?
Tastes really good. Really good.
What did you learn most today?
How they mix the bread and how it's made in the farmers.
How does that taste?
Good.
What does it taste like?
Tastes like the farm.
In such a bad year, Simon Doolan says he's lucky to be able to irrigate about 10% of his crops to ensure they meet the standards his customers demand. He's proud of what he does and is grateful that being a paddock to plate supplier means people get to know his story.
It's just good to be informing these people that farmers are good people, farmers are looking after their environment. Farmers do have to look after their farm, and because we live here. This is our life and this is where we all live. And telling that story to these people, for me, it's really important, and they absolutely love it because they don't often hear that story.